Hey, welcome to Module 5.2, Contract Amendments. In this module, we're going to talk about the flexibility you need during a construction process and how to codify the changes that come along with it into your contract. As always, we'd like to thank Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation for their support of this course through the project Community-Led Design for Specialized Housing in the North. We would also like to acknowledge the partnership that makes the certificate possible between Together Design Lab at Toronto Metropolitan University, Nishnawbe Aski Nation, the Faculty of Community Services at Toronto Metropolitan University, and WASA Distance Education Center. In this module, I'd like to focus on two things: how to make a change and why it's important to have a formal change-making process. There's three types of contract changes that we want to talk about here. Two of them are led by the owner and one led by the contractor. And when you're thinking about a change to the contract, you should really be thinking about anything that's going to impact the budget, the timeline, or the product that's being built. The first is a proposed change, and that's led by the owner. And they give the contractor the opportunity to give a quote for what the cost and time of this change is going to be. So this is when you, as the owner, identify something you'd like to see done differently in your project. You initiate the change, and the contractor is then able to respond to that initiation before it gets codified. The second is a change directive. It's usually within, or it needs to be within, the general scope of the work, but for some reason requires faster action. And so you mandate the change without the back and forth that comes with a proposed change. The risk here is that without understanding the cost or the time that the change directive is going to take, you could have significant impact on the project, but this is the contract change that moves the most quickly. The final contract change is one led by the contractor. It's a change order, and it changes the scope of work in a way that will impact the budget or the schedule, and is usually the result of some unforeseen circumstance that the contractor deems significant enough that it will have an impact on the budget or timelines. So you can imagine it being something to do with a site condition that wasn't understood before arrival, or anything else that could slow the contractor down. What you have in this kind of contract change process is the same back and forth that has been present throughout the tendering and procurement process. And still, this should be done formally and in writing. And why I emphasized on the previous slide who's initiating it is because that's kind of who has the ball first, and they then move the ball to the other person's court, and it goes back and forth through the negotiation, unless of course it's a change directive, until both parties are satisfied with what the impact on the project budget, timeline, and product are going to be before being codified. Once then everyone has agreed and the change signed off on, every amendment should be numbered and added to the contract. And what you might choose to do is have a kind of ledger of amendments that summarizes at a high level what happens in each amendment and what the impact is on the timeline and the budget. You should consider during a project that there will always be some changes that happen along the way. And if you've taken our project management course, you'll remember that we often stress the need for flexibility. Having said that, in general, a well-designed contract and contract documents, so things like the construction drawings and specifications being very detailed, minimizes the need for changes, or what you might call the risk for changes. What we want to say also is that one of the biggest risks that can arise here is if changes aren't processed quickly enough, or if folks on the ground aren't working together and being flexible for the needs of the project, what can happen is that changes get delayed and actually grow in scale or in scope, having more significant impact on the project. So, while you can anticipate that all construction projects have some changes, because they don't happen in a lab where we can control all of the outside context, we should be clear that having really high quality or well-designed construction documents should minimize the risk for change. So, if you're starting to see more changes than you expect, it might be time to take a little pause and have a wider discussion with your contractor. So, in this module, we've gone over what changes are and different types of changes and who initiates them and how to codify those into the contract. But of course, if you'd like to learn more, you can follow the reference on screen.